Welcome to the Huddle. As I've been told, it's not just a name, it's a way of life. We're joined today with Andy McCullough in Blair Kirchhoff's seat, special guest appearance. Sam Mellinger holding up his usual end. Vahe Gregorian here. It's opening day here in Kansas City, and the only one of us that lived this similar feeling here ever before is 7-year-old Sam Mellinger. Last time Haley's Comet came through and the Royals were coming off a postseason. What's this day like compared to last year, Sam?
I'm no longer high on Skittles, as I'm sure I was as a first grader or second grader or whatever. But no, I mean, I think there is like a legitimate, different feeling. I mean, obviously there would be after everything that happened last year. And I feel like people are, a lot of times opening day is sort of, it's always something you look forward to, but in sort of a, let's go day drink in the parking lot and then go to a game and skip work and all that kind of way. And now it's actually, there's 161 more games after that, and people are actually kind of looking forward to that. So it's a nice change.
Andy, last year, I mean, you were just getting here. I was only here a year, but what did you think was going to happen with the Royals last season? Did that surprise you, and where the heck do you think they are now?
It did not surprise me them making the playoffs, winning 89 games, or getting to the World Series ultimately. It just surprised me the way they did it. They were a completely different team than I would have imagined them. If I had imagined them being successful, I would have said, okay, well, Eric Hosmer broke out and had an MVP type year. Right. Salvador Perez. The offense would have been much, much better, and I think the starting pitching was kind of what was a much better than I think a lot of people expected. So, it's interesting to see just kind of what sort of team they'll become, because they have this sort of identity that was grafted onto them. It's like, oh, the best bullpen in baseball. It's not the best bullpen in baseball. They have 3 really good relievers. It's like, oh, the best outfield defense. It's like, well, they've changed that, and they've added a guy who is statistically considered worse in right field. The Royals feel that Rios is better. But, it's interesting. I think they're still in need of an identity, and I think you're going to sort of have to see what the offense is capable of this year to figure out what this team can be over the next couple seasons.
Well, part of that is a question. I think each of you guys addressed this in some form over the winter, but this idea within the club that they want to feel like they have a better team on the field to start this season than they did last year. I think there's some question about that.
Yeah, I think that they probably can make that case and probably internally feel like they've accomplished that. I don't. I mean, I think that losing 227 innings of a 3-point, whatever it was, 2.0 ERA from James Shields, because, he slipped a little bit toward the end of the year, didn't have a great postseason, so which somehow makes people forget how good he was and always is in the regular season. That's really hard to replace, especially, Edinson Volquez can – he had a good year last year, but, I would take James Shields in that matchup. And, we were talking like Gordon's, not 100%. So, no, I think last year's roster at this time was better. But, that doesn't mean that they can't get into the 80s and wins and make another run at it.
Andy, I tend to be, the touchy-feely, what's the theme of this the silliness and in the background stuff guy. That's not really a sentence. We could cut that. But you, I think, are much more precision and logic-based. Does the leadership stuff matter? Is there James Shields is gone? Is it really just about the 200 innings, or is it more about presence in that room?
The big thing is losing the 220 innings. That's the biggest thing. But the Royals' belief is that Shields' presence over the past 2 seasons, sort of like by osmosis, showed the rest of the younger players kind of how to conduct themselves. It will be interesting to see if there is a sort of crisis or things like that, who steps up and who sort of takes control of the clubhouse in a way that, Shields might have been able to, or, even guys like Raul Ibanez, had that sort of effect last summer. I think the big thing is missing Shields on the field. I think they will miss him somewhat inside the clubhouse, but that's also, each team has its own unique chemistry, so you don't want to try and force and replicate last year. So that's just it's another sort of question about this club. I mean, really one of the interesting things about this team is how, there's really nothing you can predict about them. Everything is somewhat up in the air. There's no one you can stamp in and say, I know what this player will do this year, because, all of them are somewhat question marks. And, that could end up being 95 wins. It could end up being 75 wins. And that's going to be fascinating to watch.
Some of that matter of interpretation comes from the difference between how they played during the season and what they did in the postseason. There's probably no better example of that than Mike Moustakas with the 5 postseason home runs and the defining catch. And now, though, here he is. Is he that guy? Is he the October guy? Does that mean he's changed, or does that mean nothing at all? And now we're going to find out with him batting second to start the season. What do we make of all that?
It doesn't make sense to me, batting Moose second for a lot of reasons. But one of the things that I just thought of is, batting him second, and their reasoning behind it isn't that they think he's the guy from October. It's that they think he's the guy from March. That he's had these better at-bats in the spring and is trying to go the other way and beat the shift a little bit. I don't know. It's kind of a Jedi mind trick about, we bat you this high because we believe in you, and that's going to give you confidence to go on your way. It's far from the lineup that I would put up there. I think lineup construction is overrated in general, but it makes no sense to me. But crazier things have worked, and they worked last year in that wild card game on the last day of September.
They did the most unaccountable of all games. Andy, do you feel like the lineup? What you do with the lineup matters. They don't seem to have a lot of natural pieces to be that guy in that traditional role.
Well, yeah, but just give your best hitters the most at bats.
Right.
If you don't have the roles, just give your best guys as many chances to hit as possible. And right now they've got a lineup where their leadoff hitter has a career 299 OBP, their number 2 hitter has a 290 OBP, and their number 3 hitter has hit 17 home runs since 2010. So it's suboptimal, as you would say. But again, it's not a huge deal. There's going to be I think this lineup exists for 9 games, and then it changes. Because a lot of things would have to go right for it to stick around, and it'll be a sort of thing. Oh yeah, remember on opening day they batted Moose second, and Lorenzo Cain was the 3 hitter. Weird, and we'll kind of look back. The opening day lineup last year was much different than the one they had in the playoffs, and so it'll take time to figure it out. They have some new pieces, but yeah, I mean it's Mike Moustakas statistically is one of the worst hitters in baseball. I mean, I don't think that's not really telling tales out of school. That's just kind of using the internet to look at lists of players and where their numbers rank. And so to give him more at-bats than Eric Hosmer, more at-bats than Lorenzo Cain, more at-bats to even a not 100% Alex Gordon, more at-bats than Kendrys Morales, who I think is actually going to have a pretty good season this year, more at-bats than Salvador Perez, et cetera, et cetera. It's probably not the best way to construct a lineup, but, whatever. We'll see.
Well, and just sort of one last thought as we bring this thing in for a landing. Does it matter if this team is hungry or complacent, and can we tell yet if it is one of those or the other? I mean, does getting to Game 7 of the World Series mean that they're, going to fight harder than ever, or does it mean they're like, we've arrived, we're fine, or nothing at all? I'm just curious, either of you guys have thoughts on that.
I think, again, you can try as hard as you can. That doesn't mean you can hit a baseball. It's like it's not like an effort-based sport. You know what I mean? Sometimes effort is counterintuitive in baseball. But talking to the guys, even this spring, they still sound devastated by Game 7. They still sound really affected by that loss. And talking to Hosmer, he said once they got to Houston, they were going to basically stop talking about it. That they needed to kind of move on. So I think it's not hard to find motivation, and I don't see them as a group that's complacent. I see there's a confidence. There's sort of a swagger, and sometimes that can read as complacency. But I don't really feel like they're a group that feels like they accomplished all their goals last year. I think they were really stung by how things ended, and I don't think they've gotten over it.
Is that sort of your sense too?
Yeah, I have kind of the same read that Andy does, but that they do. There is a swagger that didn't exist last year, and last year there was a swagger that didn't exist, in the years before that. But here's one thing, and this is a trap that probably all 3 of us might fall into at some point in the season, is the complacency versus hungry thing. If they win 90 games this year, it's not necessarily because they were hungry versus complacent.
Right.
If they lose 90 games, it's not necessarily because they were complacent versus hungry. I think,
Right.
There's that causality that people like us sometimes kind of mix up, and probably will fall into that trap. But right now they're saying all the right things. They look the way that you would want them to look coming out of, off that off season. Because if that was me and I was 25 years old, I might come in a little fat, fatter than I am.
Yeah, you
Right.
came in fat anyway.
Well, right. Yeah, fatter than I am.
Yes.
So, but who knows if that's really what's going to make the season tick or not.
Yeah. Well, it all starts today. Thanks a lot for being with us. We'll all be headed out to the ballpark soon. Keep up with us on Twitter, at McCullough Star, at V Gregorian, at Sam Mellinger. Check out the True Blue app and stay with us on kansascity.com. Until next week, Vahe Gregorian, Andy, and Sam, talk to you then.